It is our pleasure to have with us Kevin Otero. Kevin is a graduate of our chapter from New Mexico, spent years traveling with SIGEP's headquarters staff right out of college, and has now turned that into 2 years of a phenomenal career, creating opportunities for growth both locally and internationally. Kevin is now the CEO of Royal Paper, spent years with Procter & Gamble, where he worked himself up to be a vice president as well. And he offers an extensive experience for all of us in a number of business strategies, in sales, and capabilities that we all bring to the table, and overall culture experience that I'm really excited for you all to be able to take, to mold, and to work with your own chapters as we go. Kevin brings with himself a wealth of experience, not only in industry, but in life, in leadership, and in culture itself. And we're very, very thankful to have him with us this evening. Kevin, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Sean. It's great to be with all of you this evening and this afternoon if you're on the West Coast, like I am, or out in Phoenix. Looking forward to spending a little bit of time with you. It's great to see SIGEP adapting and using Zoom just like all of us are in the business world to try to manage and continue to move things along in an environment like I don't think any of us have ever experienced or ever expected we would be. And hopefully you'll be able to take a little something away from the session today as we spend some time together. And I just appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit with you. As Sean mentioned, I spent most of my time after working for SIGEP, actually working for Procter & Gamble, and spent nearly 30 years with Procter & Gamble in a variety of different jobs, started in sales. And actually, one of the things that was really cool is actually the headquarters had a recruiting program where they would come and they would try to recruit end of the year each of the regional directors, because they really saw in that situation how much the development programs and being an RD helped really prepare you for early business roles, and they had quite a bit of success in doing that. And so Sean McKenna really helped usher that program through and came back to the headquarters often to recruit. And that's one of the ways I came into P&G, and then also had the opportunity to also bring some others in, like Eric Lauterbach, who I think also did one of these a few weeks ago. So it's a fun opportunity. And certainly as presidents of your chapters, you're in a position to really have a great opportunity to develop a lot of leadership skills. And I found that those chapter experiences that I had really provided a huge foundation for success as you started to get out into the business world. And that's why I also find that it's fun also in coming back and being able to share a little bit on some of the things maybe that I've learned since then that maybe you can apply in your chapter dealings that might help in a different way. And so when asked to do this, I was very happy to help and try to do so. And we're going to spend a little bit of time just talking a little bit about some of the leadership philosophies I've developed over the last few years, working in a variety of different industries, but mostly in the consumer product space. And one of the things I'd encourage you to do over time too is start to mold what you think are things that are really important to you and your leadership style. And each of us brings some different things to the party with that. And also thinking about what's important to you and being able to share that with others as you come into new organizations is really important as well. And certainly it's that way, I think, also in the fraternity. And so for me, one of the things that as I look over the 35 years that you see a lot is that it's really important to have a compelling vision and a strategy to go off and deliver that vision. And too often, one of the things that you see in organizations and why they struggle is there isn't really an aligned vision. And so people are going off in different directions. And you don't maybe make as much progress as you possibly could if you were all working together. And certainly in the fraternity, there's lots of opportunities to work on things that help create a better environment and can attract more people to have the same shared experience. But part of that is you developing that vision. And so we'll talk a little bit about that piece. But then it's not just having that vision, it's also really having the right strategies behind that and plans to start to do that. And one of the things that really stands out with that is creating the right culture to help drive and deliver some of that change. And I'm going to share with you a little model that I've used that I learned actually at P&G, and that Sean McKenna practiced and taught some of us as regional directors as well, that I have taken with me over many years that I found has been super helpful. And if you master it, it can help you in lots of ways, in outside activities that you might have in organizations you might be doing volunteer work for, but certainly in any kind of business situation. The model really works and helps you in continuing to be an effective leader. The third thing really I've always found too, and that I think is also really important as a president of the chapter, is it's really important to surround yourself with hard, smart people. And, part of that is building the right leadership team also within the fraternity. Obviously, we tend to elect the officers, but encouraging and spotting talent in the fraternity that might not be thinking about running for office, or helping draw out and build confidence for people to seek out those leadership opportunities, and spotting the talent is really important. And building the best team in that, and helping build the best team also that can continue to take over into the role as you leave. The president's role is also one of the biggest legacies, and is an important thing to think about, I think, as president, in developing some of the underclassmen so that they can grow into those president roles. And so I think one of the coolest things there is always when you can spot someone that's going to be maybe better than you were, and help nurture them along in spotting that type of talent. And that's one thing that I've seen not only played in the fraternity, but plays throughout life. If you can get someone that you spot that can do some things better than you do, and you can convince them to be part of your team, not only will you grow, the whole team will end up being better. And so that's something that has been important to me over time. And then, it's easy to say, but treating everyone with mutual respect and really kind of living the golden rule. And, I think that piece comes to life in lots of different ways. And part of that is a lot of the things that build trust, and building trust is part of what helps build a culture. And so, treating people with that respect that you'd want to be treated with, building trust in those relationships. And if you aren't consistent in that kind of a way, often you won't get people to follow you in the kind of way that you want. I think the other piece too is we are only there a short period of time over that 4-year period, and managing the fraternity as if it were your own, and realizing that in a way it is a business, and leaving it with good, healthy conditions is one of the things we do as stewards. And right now, certainly with the situation with COVID, we're going through a situation that's challenging our ability to recruit, our ability to develop leaders. And, it's really important that we adapt to make sure that we don't lose that year, and that we try to leverage it and outdo what other groups are doing to try to be in a better spot. And then I think the other piece that's always really important, and I know it's one of the things that is part of really the whole balanced man concept, is really fostering a learning environment and being a learner across all areas of your life. I would tell you, in looking back over 35 years in working with different folks in the CPG industry, the people that constantly are out there trying to learn and adapt and try new things are the ones who continue to grow in a career, and others become stale in that situation. And, the people that aren't trying Zoom today, or using it for different ways to connect with people, as you can imagine, are getting behind, as an example. And I think that fostering that learning environment and being a lifelong learner is something that's really important in being a leader and continuing to stay relevant. And then I think the other thing that's really important is just really fostering an environment that supports diversity, and really recognizing that we all do different things in different ways. And when you bring people together in a team that can represent those different points of views and that come at it because of different experiences and a different background, you'll get to better answers. And, you know, a lot of times, sometimes you think that that's something that gets like a negative stereotype probably when you think about fraternities in general, and that they think that all SIGEPs are cut out of the same mold or whatever it may be. And really, I think, frankly, one of the things that helps set SIGEP apart is it has been a group that has nurtured diversity and trying to look at it from a lot of different perspectives early on and recognize the power that comes through that in building teams and building young men coming together from different experiences. It's no different in the business world in that situation, other than as you start to develop those skills and learning to live in an environment with people that are different than you, you're able to take those things onto a business world, and hopefully they teach you to adapt also and appreciate differences, especially as you have opportunities to move into a more global environment where you've got diversity aspects in all kinds of different ways across income or race, religion, and all of those types of things. And I had the opportunity to live in Belgium and Switzerland working for P&G, and I think a lot of the pieces that you learned and then working with people that were different than you in college helped in those experiences. So huge opportunity to also just think about the diversity coming on to campuses today and how important that is for universities and making sure we're staying relevant. And so I think a fun piece with that. And then the other piece in it that I think is a fundamental part of how I think about leadership in general is that you got to be really externally focused and try to understand who is best in class and what are they doing different that's more appealing than what you're doing, and being honest about that. And that's something that I think is something that some people have said is kind of like facing your reality. And I think leaders face their reality and then lead change to try to create something better. And across with it, I think it is an environment to compete. And there's nothing more than fun than winning in business or winning by being the best fraternity or winning a Buck Cup or whatever it may be. And doing it together because you created best in class capabilities. And, that's something that I really love. And I love that feeling and love building teams that do that. So if you go on to the next slide, these are some things I think of when I think of great leaders. And you can see they reflect some of the things that I talked related to philosophies. But, a lot of that, again, comes down to being consistent and building upon your values and consistently doing what is right versus what is expedient, and having integrity as you work through some of those things, but also constantly realizing that there is an opportunity to be better or greater than we are today. And being part of leading that change and doing something different. So you all can read through some of those things that I think are important characteristics of leaders. One of the things I'd love to just hear from you is what are some of the things you think stand out with leaders that might not be there, that you think are really important characteristics of leaders? Anybody, if you use the feature to raise your hand, we could call on you and just build on the list a little bit. Michael?
Yeah, so hey, how's it going? I'm Michael King. So I think one of the big things that I've kind of learned in the 4 months of being president is that you want to stay calm when things don't go as planned. It's always good to have contingency plans, but it's important, especially when you're talking with your exec or the chapter in general, is when something goes wrong, we have to say, okay, let's just be calm, let's handle this the right way, instead of saying, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Things of that nature.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, like one of the things that happens as part of that for sure is people do choose to follow what the leader does in many instances. And if they sense you're panicked, guess what? That's going to make them more panicked. And I do think that that's one of the interesting skills to develop as a leader, is kind of knowing how to stay inside yourself in those public moments that people are looking at you in that kind of a way. Colin, do you have one to share?
Yeah, hi everyone. Colin Anderson from Washington Alpha. One thing that I remember talking about in Ruck leadership was the ability for leaders to be vulnerable. I think it's important because like we're expected to know all the answers. We're expected to like know every little thing that every single member asks, if it's something like super minuscule. But just being honest and be like, I don't know the answer, but working with them to find that answer. And be open to your members. Like as presidents, like we're the head of the fraternity, but we got to be honest when we are struggling, because we do have our brothers around for support. So just kind of being vulnerable and being honest in those respects.
Totally agree. And that builds a lot of trust, right? When they see those pieces when it's done in an authentic way. So I completely agree with that. And it's a tough one. Kyle?
Yeah, so I'm Kyle from Indiana Zeta. And one thing that I've learned is just the importance of delegating or admitting your weaknesses. Like if you really don't know how something should be done, or don't know how to do something, like don't be afraid to delegate that, and look for help. And just being able to use others on your executive board to make those decisions.
And one of the things that you'll see that I think is important as well with that is delegating to people's strengths. And one of the things that you really have to do in that situation is develop the skill to try to help understand and spot some of those strengths over time. And the fraternity is a great way to do that, because you see a lot of people coming at things with different styles, and helping pick people that maybe like process more and have them lead process or scorecard that might be important, or people that are really outgoing that are great at persuading or winning over others over from the outside and leveraging them in ways from a recruiting standpoint, or things like that you can really see play to people's natural talents is one thing that I think is a big importance of being a great leader, and certainly one that's a build to the list. Chris?
Curtis County from Texas Chi. One thing that I think of it that a good leader has is the ability to ask if anyone else has any thoughts of their own. Your way is not always the right way, and you need to be able to ask for help or from a new perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's part of building the right team around you and helping build other talent as well. So all good ads. We're going to continue to go on and talk a little bit more about leadership if you go on to the next slide. But again, thank you for all of you that kind of raised your hand and shared some of those. I think we all see leadership in different ways. All of those characteristics that you talked about are important, and some of the ones that I shared obviously are important as well. And I think one of the things that's cool is realizing that you could have very different leadership styles and still be very successful in different ways by tapping into those. But part of it also is being very in tune with yourself and what you do well and what you don't do well. And also, I think being consistent in how you attack some of the types of things. And so, before diving into the 5E model, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between management and leadership. And, there are activities also that we need to do to kind of manage things as part of the leader of the fraternity. And, that comes down to, in some instances, organizing and planning events. We have to have budgets, obviously, that we have to stay within, as an example. And doing things like that help us continue to grow and manage the fraternities business in the right way. But leadership really is different in that it's really helping to kind of create more of a vision and inspire more significant change and more dramatic change, and recognizing when that needs to happen, because you're not satisfying some of your constituents or the groups that are important to you. And also, it's some of the most rewarding work that you can do as well. And certainly the work that SIGEP has been doing to try to change the fraternity experience, and ever since the introduction of the Balanced Man, is a great example of trying to do some of those types of things. But that also changes every year, given the context and what's going on campuses around the world, and what's going on environmentally and socially. And you can see that certainly today. And so more than ever, your leadership is being demanded in finding new ways to attack things, to keep fraternities relevant in a very different environment today, where we don't have some of the physical experiences in the exact same way. And also with all the challenges that we have in coming together in the interruption of our social environment, which is so important, such an important part of being in a fraternity. So couldn't agree more, and the time is ripe for leadership in that situation. And as you talk about leadership, I know you guys have spent some other sessions with others from past staff talking some of those things. And if you just go on to the next slide, one of the things that a lot of people say, and one of the probably most famous quotes in business, is from Peter Drucker, who's obviously a guru in management. And one of the things that he says is culture eats strategy for breakfast, and has written books on it, and has had some of the best people who've been talking about it. One of his beliefs is you can create the best vision in the world, have the best plans in the world, but if you don't create the right culture to support it, you're never going to deliver on the vision. And that's why I think it's really cool that this is one of the things that you're spending a little bit more time talking in the leadership forum, because it's true. I mean, the reality is you have to have the culture to support some of those types of things. And so we're just going to talk through a quick model called the 5E model. And it's to help you really get a lot of those things right. And personally, in my own experience, as you work through some of those, I've found that it really does help. I'm not going to go through every single slide in detail, but if you'll go on to the next slide, what I will say is that if you consistently use this model and work all the elements, you will become a better leader. There's no doubt about it. I've seen myself grow as I got better at doing this. Both GE and P&G have used this model for developing their leaders for a number of years. They've stuck with that same model for more than 40 years as part of their management training. So consistently, I think it does work. This is a version taken directly that I got paid to consult people with, that walks through some of the examples, and actually literally was shared with a company called Color Science. So that's why you see that in the middle as we were doing their management training. I have not adapted the slides to the fraternity, but I will try to give you some of the examples as we go through it. And frankly, you'll be able to see and translate it very well yourself as you go through it. And so the first big step there is really envisioning. And part of that is really articulating what the future needs to look like and what things need to be different and why you're better in that environment. And I think one of the things that we tend to do is we tend to look a lot at ourselves, but we don't tend to reach out and look more at the universe and how we're doing versus whoever is best in class. and developing that skill to kind of understand who is winning on campuses today and who is creating organizations that people want to be part of, and trying to understand what are the things that they're doing different allows you to innovate. And that's a huge role that you can have as a president in helping kind of face your reality. And, you know, just as a part of that, and to try to make the point a little bit, one of the things I'd like to have you guys all do is just take a quick poll and look at where you are on the benchmarking with a few questions that we have. Okay, so obviously you all have had a chance to do that, and you see that, you know, one of the areas that certainly we mark ourselves on is in recruitment, development, and GPA. Those are a lot of things that I think are traditional things that are super important and part of the foundation, and probably one of the reasons why that comes up so high in the poll. But when you think about it, you think about new business models and new things that are evolving, a lot of times they come on the fringes, and they come from areas that we don't understand, and that's where some of the innovation is happening. Again, I think as the president of the chapter, a lot of times we will come back to those traditional normal things to look at as part of the envisioning. But I'd encourage you to kind of look on the edges. What other things are happening in broader organizations or that are growing? And you can see it's very low on there where we say we don't clearly benchmark our results with results of other organizations on campus. What other organizations are growing? Why? What are they helping people with? And what can we bring in to our organization that are some of those types of things? I'll just tell you, like in business, how that translates in some ways. You know, a lot of companies have been very surprised because they were focused on the bricks and mortar retailers that they had historically competed with, and the new business models evolved that took significant share out of them. You know, I worked for a company that lost their, when you think about it with Gillette razors, they were kind of asleep on the subscription model, and for many years thought it was going to be too niche, and only recently got after that in the last 3 years after Harry's and Dollar Shave Club kicked their butts. And, you know, it's a good example of not benchmarking against where the innovation is happening and where there are new things coming that are important for the group. Okay, I see there's a question coming, like, what is the best way to network with other fraternities and chapters? Honestly, from my own personal experience, a lot of that in my day, which was many years ago, was through the IFC and through the Interfraternity Council. And I think that's a good way to get exposed to some of the other leaders. And everybody wants to brag about some of the things they're doing well. And often they'll be happy to tell you things they think that are helping them be successful. And for me, that's one way. The other is just talking to some of the folks also that are in leadership positions that get to see it across. The Dean of Student Affairs, or dean of student activities. Those are individuals often that work with a lot of the different groups and can be great resources for talking some of that and learning from. You know, the other piece is just you can even do some of those things by just getting some of your team potentially of officers to go out and ask some of those questions with just incoming freshmen during some of the weeks where we might have either rush week in asking some of those kind of questions, or where you have fairs for the clubs or those kinds of activities on some of the campuses, and ask them, you know, what they found interesting, what was attractive to them. So anyway, that is a good example of how benchmarking can really help you envision the future in a different way by taking pieces or elements of things that are maybe changing the way students are thinking about things and organizations on campus, and bringing that into ours in our own unique way. And being able to describe what's different is a big part of that envisioning work. All right, if you go on to the next one, the next part of the model is engaging. And again, if you go on to, you got to close out the poll to go on to the next slide. Sean.
Are you seeing the engage one?
I am, but what I'm seeing is the poll is still covering over on it, so you got to close the poll.
How's that?
Okay. So again, if you look at the engaging piece, you know, one of the things, again, that I think personally, you can read some of the bullet points on the slide on this part of the model, but this is trying to engage the broader audience and help build that vision by engaging other folks that might be officers on your team or other stakeholders, whether it be alumni, whether it be some of the student leaders in other groups, and sharing your vision with them and talking to them about what's compelling about it, what's not compelling about it. And, you know, one of the things I've found with that piece, when you try to envision a bit the future and you start to articulate what that looks like, is 3 questions that are usually helpful. You know, what's most exciting about the vision that you're currently talking to them about? And then try to dial that piece up, asking them follow-up questions like, what could make that stronger? Or what excites you about that? And trying to build those types of things in. And then, you know, another one that I find that's really helpful from an engagement standpoint is ask them what they're most afraid of, or what they think is the biggest barrier to being able to deliver on the vision. And then, you know, really starting as a team to talk about how you might tackle that barrier, and or, you know, why they're afraid of that piece in particular. And that's a big role, I think, that we play, obviously, especially in the president leadership role, getting people talking about those things that both are compelling and attractive to them in the future, so that they can also talk and articulate those well with others to bring other people into the vision, but also bringing out those fears we all have. That's human nature. That's part of culture, right? That causes us not to take on change or to do big things, and make it okay to talk things that we can do to overcome some of that together. And so we do have, again, another poll quickly here that will allow you to just think a little bit about it in your own group, and thinking on a continuum of where are you, and thinking about what new capabilities that you need in order to deliver your vision, and how broadly you're engaging with people on that. So just go through the questions and kind of try to look at where you're at today in your own journey on sharing your vision and building capabilities to deliver that on your campus. Okay, so great to see, obviously, that you're up on the higher end of the scale overall, with over half the respondents seeing that. Not surprising, given that we're usually leading change on many of the campuses that we're on. But I think the other piece, as you look at that, you can see that these questions are super helpful to talk as a chapter leadership team. Where do you think you really are? And again, having some of that honest discussion around the areas that either your capabilities aren't strong enough in today to help deliver on the vision, or the ones that you're really making great progress on that you can leverage more, that you're seeing are even more powerful than you thought they were in helping drive excitement and change and engagement in the chapter. Going and having discussion about how you're doing versus your vision, and getting specific enough to talk it related to the specific capabilities needed to deliver that vision is really a big role that the president can play in that situation. And again, this is one of the ways to capitalize on the diversity and the great different things that others can bring to the party by trying to understand things that are important to them that might not be important to you, or might stand out to them that might not stand out to you, that can be leveraged as kind of untapped. And I think, again, talking as a chapter leadership team around those elements is one of the best ways to use the model. Why are we not doing well in recruiting? Who are we not getting to? You know, what about our messaging is not relevant? Or we had a big drop off in people improving the GPA overall for our class. What's changed that's driving some of that? Is it because of obviously the environment of us not being able to do study groups together? How could we match that up in a different way in a virtual world? You know, really trying to get down more into the detail on the capabilities that are important, that make you different and make you attractive, and or the competition's doing better than you. And that's really leveraging the engagement portion of the model. Go on to the next one. This part of the model is also super important as well for developing the right culture. And it really is in how you continue to feed the success by energizing the group around the vision and constantly helping show progress that you're making towards the vision, and adjusting as you go along. As leaders, none of us get it right the first time usually, and there's always things that you learn along the way. One of the cool things about being a great leader is being agile and being able to see you know, some of those steps that can take you in a different direction, and being in tune when you're starting to see the parts that you thought were important may not be resonating or need to be adjusted. But also it's celebrating the successes. So catch someone doing a new thing that you're trying to do really well and celebrate that across the organization. I remember when we were in the chapter weekly, one of the things that we used to do is give a trophy that got passed from each meeting at the end, just for someone that stood out as the brother of the week in the chapter meeting. And it could be for a variety of different things that we were trying to accomplish as a group, but it always was told with a story on why they deserved it that week. And the leadership team kind of voted on that. And as it's a way of helping drive some energy around the vision that you have and progress towards it. So catching people doing things that are right and the kind of vision that you want to have for the chapter as an example. You go on to the next one. You know, the other big piece there too is just enabling the vision to come to life. And that's also recognizing when you don't have the right resources up against it, or you need to flow different experiences or talent to it. And that comes back to leveraging diversity and kind of knowing where your team is at. And different than managing something, it's more you're leading by building a team and recognizing that the team is this different combination of things that come together that you need to enable. Honestly, another big piece there for presidents is your regional director. Talking to them when you're feeling like you're stuck and you don't know how to overcome something, and trying to ask them, how are they doing that at other chapters, or where have you seen another chapter that's faced a similar issue and how are they overcoming that? Again, on your own campus, talking some of those things with other leaders of organizations that may have same type of issue. So, you know, the barrier buster is a big part of being a leader, I think, in that situation, and helping to enable the team. Then if you go on to the fifth and final element, it's really executing and executing with excellence. And so, you know, again, constantly making sure that you're clear on what you're trying to achieve and that you have measurable success measures. And, you know, a lot of that, frankly, in the fraternity world is things like making sure that you're growing and that you're healthy as an organization. So making sure you're recruiting new members and bringing in new members, that you're initiating people and they're not leaving because they're not engaged or defecting as part of that. And in lots of ways, that's a fun part of building an organization that's attractive and seeing, you know, how you're doing on that. And if you want 100 new members, it's also knowing how to break it into smaller goals to help celebrate and execute against as you do it along the way. So if you've never had a 100-person pledge class, how do you break it down into smaller goals of 4 one night and 4 another night, and celebrate those wins along the way until over the time period you can get to 100? And what new activities do you need to do to get at people that you haven't seen? Considering joining a fraternity that you could do differently. So anyway, I see there's another question coming up, and yes, Sean can send out the PowerPoint to anybody that wants it. I do know there is a lot of content here. The next piece is really, honestly, just to turn it over to you guys, and I'll try to answer any questions you might have, but as you break into your sessions, I have developed some questions you might want to talk through in applying the model to a fraternity setting.
Kevin, I'll have one for you for I think all the undergraduates in the room and for a few of the volunteers. I want to go back to the beginning of the session. You talked about an individual named Sean McKenna. That as a member of the staff, I'm very well in tune with Sean's legacy. But for a good SIGEP history lesson, tell us about Sean McKenna.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, like again, Sean over his entire lifetime recognized, I think, the things that he learned and benefited from in growing as a leader, as a SIGEP, and wanted to find ways to give back to the organization and give back to the younger folks throughout, and would help a brother in any way he possibly could, and really role model holy friendship forever. Part of that was things that he would do, obviously, in working for regional academies and doing leadership training there. But part of it was all his service on different boards and committees as well, like the housing committee, being grand president, and some of those types of things that he did over time. I personally was lucky in that he was the person who helped me get an interview. He wasn't the one who interviewed me, but he helped me get an interview in Phoenix. And then in a crazy way, 30 years later, when I had the global role and was responsible for the salon business globally, I met with Sean multiple times in Moscow and had dinner with him in Moscow. And he helped me with networking there with a couple of other business leaders. And, I think that's one of the things that's amazing about the fraternity experience, and amazing about how it really is lifetime, not just the 4 years that you're in while you're on campus and all the great things that happen there, but the relationships that you build over time. And he was a model for giving back and investing in those relationships over time.
Appreciate the stories as well. For those of you who don't know, look up Sean McKenna. He's an incredible person that's influenced a lot of SIGEP the way that you see it today. Any questions from the group? Any thoughts, any things you would like to expand upon while we're all still together?
Kevin, I was wondering if I could ask you real quick. You talked about benchmarking quite a bit. Just thinking about different ways to benchmark against campus organizations, not just fraternities. I think that's something that at our chapter, we're trying to do more and kind of struggling to figure out exactly how to do it. So I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think, Greg, like one of the ways that you can do that is really just trying to look across some of the elements that are also important in the fraternity. Like as you look at those organizations, how are they bringing people in? How did they get people to join, and how are they attracting people to be part of the organization? What are things that make that attractive today that they're not able to get in the fraternity? That might cause them to be interested in that. How are they engaging with them? Is it in face-to-face situations? Is it electronically? What does it look like, and how they're bringing experts into the equation? Is that one of the things that makes it attractive? They have people coming in to speak that are experts already in the field, or that are experts artistically, or whatever it might be that's making that group attractive. Is it a filmmaker that has had success in creating a movie? And how can you take elements of what that group is doing well and bring them into your development process as part of your overall experience? And so I think it is really trying to think through all the things that happen that they do, and breaking it into smaller chunks, and asking yourself, how would this apply in the fraternity? And can we do this? And why don't we do it today? And, again, that's a great one to be able to play off with some of the brothers on, to see whether or not doing some of those things would be something that would be compelling, that would change things. And I try to pick ones that are fastest growing. And if I were personally trying to figure out, what some of those are, it probably would be asking the dean of students in some of those groups, because they're very aware usually of what's going on.
Perfect. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for everything you've given to us tonight. I know there is a lot to apply in our small group sessions here. Before we move to breakout rooms, feel free to come off mute, hit the clap sign, whatever it may be. But Kevin, thank you so much for all the wisdom you've shared with us this evening. We really, really appreciate it. And I'm excited to see the impact this will make with all of our leaders here, not just in the coming weeks and months, but really throughout the rest of their lives. Is there any parting words, last comments you'd love to give with the group?
No, just what I would say is have fun. I mean, honestly, you're in the best part of your life, and take advantage of the role that you're playing as a leader in the fraternity, because I guarantee you it'll give back to you for many, many years. and other things that you lead in from a business standpoint. And now's the time to take risk and have some fun with it. You can really learn who you are as a leader and start to grow, understanding those types of things you do well or areas you could improve in that will make you an even greater leader throughout life. And it certainly is a skill that you hone.